We are finally approaching the second anniversary of Wuthering Waves, and the game has changed a lot since its original release. From the introduction of new combat mechanics like negative status in version 2.0 to completely new systems like Toon Strain in version 3.0. We went from characters that barely relied on energy to units that can literally stop time during combat. So now is the perfect time to break down the best units in the game and the steps a beginner should follow when starting Wuthering Waves today. We will be considering multiple factors such as how future-proof a character is, how versatile they are, how free-to-play friendly they are, and most importantly, how effective they are at clearing endgame content. So let's start with the best support units in the entire game, Verina and Shorekeeper. These two are going to be the fundamental units every Wuthering Waves player should have, especially if you are starting fresh. Verina can be obtained from the standard banner, while Shorekeeper can be obtained from the beginner limited banner that every new player receives when they start the game. And there is a reason why Kuro Games made these characters accessible to everyone, especially Shorekeeper, who is technically a limited character. The reason is simply how important their roles are. These two are the best supports in the game, not only because they provide extremely strong buffs, but also because of how versatile they are. They can literally work with almost any unit in your account. Both of them are also very easy to build. You only need to level them to around level 60 or 70 and focus mainly on their Liberation and Forte talents, since those provide their healing and their most important buffs. For Echoes, both of them use the same set, Rejuvenating Glow, and weapons like Variation are perfect choices because they provide energy and concerto regeneration, making their rotations much faster. Speaking of rotations, another reason these characters are so strong is because they have some of the shortest rotations in the entire game, which allows your main DPS to stay on the field longer. These two units will act as the base pillars for your first two teams. Now, since we already have two sustained supports, let's talk about the second slot, which is usually a buffer or sub-DPS. Currently, there are two extremely strong units that can be played alongside almost any DPS character, Sanhua and Mortefi. Sanhua provides basic attack damage buffs, which are extremely useful for characters like Camellia, Luuk, or beginner units like Encore. Meanwhile, Mortefi provides heavy attack damage bonuses, which are perfect for characters like Augusta, Galbrena, and Chuyuan. Together, these two buffers can support almost every DPS character in the game. They can also hold the Moonlit Clouds set, which provides even more buffs for your main DPS. In terms of investment, their personal damage as sub-DPS units has become less important compared to earlier versions of the game, because the DPS requirements in the current meta are simply much higher. Their main job now is to provide buffs, while spending as little time on the field as possible. Which brings us to another very important point, learning proper rotations. Optimizing rotations for these units can actually save you a surprising amount of time. Sometimes, small adjustments in your rotation can improve your team performance far more than upgrading gear. If you want a dedicated video about the best rotations for these characters, let me know in the comments. Now, let's finally talk about DPS characters. But before that, we need to understand how a DPS unit is evaluated. The basic metric is obviously their damage output, but we also need to consider how free-to-play friendly they are, how versatile they are, and how well they scale into future updates. And honestly, if someone is starting Wuthering Waves today, I would strongly recommend skipping most older DPS characters, especially 1.0 era units, because they are simply not comparable to the newer DPS characters. Yes, there has been a very clear power increase over the last 2 years of the game. Right now, Augusta and Luuk are the two DPS units that work the most smoothly with 4-star supports. Augusta is a heavy attack damage dealer, which means she works perfectly with Mortefi. Meanwhile, Luuk is a basic attack damage dealer, which makes Sanhua his ideal support. Some other free-to-play friendly options include Galbrena, who also works very well with Mortefi, and Carlotta, who became much stronger after the release of Booling. Especially if you have Sequence 6 Booling, she becomes the best support for Carlotta. Apart from these, I would generally avoid most older DPS units. Characters like Camellia or Gion may appear free-to-play friendly, but their damage output is simply too low compared to modern DPS characters. However, there are still some extremely versatile DPS units. One of the best examples is Aemeath. She's currently one of the strongest S0R1 DPS units in the game, but more importantly, she's also one of the most versatile because she has two different playstyles, Toon Strain and Fusion Burst. This allows her to work with both negative status teams and Toon Strain teams, and since she's a fusion character, she can also be played with units like Lupa, Brant, and Changli, which gives her more team options than almost any other DPS in the game. Another very strong unit is Galbrena. She can be played in two different archetypes, mono fusion teams with Lupa or echo skill teams with Chuyuan. And finally, Phrolova. She's one of the most unique characters in the game because she does not rely on energy recharge to activate her liberation. She's also currently the only true off-field DPS character in the game, which allows her to fit into many different team compositions. For example, mono Havoc teams with Havoc DPS characters, or setups with Cantarella and Rochia. She can also be used in echo skill teams with Chuyuan and Galbrena, which makes her an incredibly strong unit in the current meta. So overall, these are, in my opinion, some of the most important characters in Wuwa right now. Now that we've talked about the characters, let's move on to some other important things every beginner should pay attention to. The first point is Echoes management. This is one of the most important steps when building your characters. There are mainly two ways to obtain echoes. The first one is by doing domains, and the second is through exploration. But there are also some lesser-known methods. For example, Nightmare Purification and Tacit Discord Nests. These reset every day and do not even cost Waveplates, which makes them one of the best ways to farm echoes. But obtaining the echoes is only the first step. After getting them, you still need to upgrade them using Echo Experience. And this is actually where most players make mistakes. Never upgrade an Echo fully to level 25, and honestly, not even to level 15. The reason is simple. The amount of Echo Experience required to upgrade the first 19 levels is almost the same as upgrading the final 6 levels. So the best strategy is this. Roll your Echo to level 10 first. Check the substats. If the stats are exactly what you were looking for, then continue upgrading. Otherwise, simply move on to the next one. This method will save you a huge amount of resources, because Echo Experience is usually the resource players run out of the fastest. Now let's talk about resource investment. You need to plan your investment very carefully. For example, around 60 to 70% of your early Waveplates should be used on your main DPS, because your main DPS will be responsible for the majority of your damage. So your priority should always be maximizing your main DPS first. Until that happens, your support characters can comfortably stay around level 70. The same rule also applies to weapons. DPS weapons should always be upgraded to level 90. Speaking of weapons, the weapon banner in Wuwa is actually one of the most generous in any gacha game, and that is also the reason why many signature weapons are extremely strong. In the current meta, getting a DPS signature weapon can be just as important as getting their best-in-slot support, which already shows how powerful these weapons are. So whenever possible, prioritize getting your DPS signature weapon over support signature weapons. Another useful tip is recycling unwanted echoes. This helps you recover resources and makes farming much more efficient. If you want a deeper breakdown of account progression, I have already made several videos covering those topics, so make sure to check them out. This video was mainly focused on the best characters for beginner players in the current version of Wuwa. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one.